The male organ, the reproductive organ of Osiris, he threw into the Nile River, which was then, according to the legend, eaten by the fish. And that was the only organ that she could not find. She found all the different parts of his body, but that was the one part of his body. Now, why is that so important? Because in ancient culture, as you know, even from the stories in Corinth, we know that they had 1,000 male and female prostitutes in Corinth alone, that fornication, homosexuality, and the like were very prevalent in ancient cultures. Fertility was off the charts, most important to them. Sexual promiscuity was far worse than it is even today, if you can imagine that. And so this was really important that she find this reproductive organ of her husband, which represented power and strength, fertility, passing the gene and royalty to the next generation. So because she could not find the male organ of her deceased husband, she decided to make a commemorative pillar in Egypt that would stand as a remembrance of his power in the form of a concrete or a stone obelisk. And that obelisk, we know from sources, is where they believed that the ancient sun god's spirit lived. As we see from the source on your screen there, that they believed that the Egyptian obelisk was worshipped as well as the dwelling place of the sun god. And they began to put these obelisks all over the world as she began to do this in commemoration of her deceased husband, so that everyone would know that his presence was in that city. And you begin to see them pop up all over the place, all over the ancient world. We can see in the Bible, in Hebrew, the word for pillar or idol is kaman. And kaman literally means sun idol or sun pillar. You can see in Isaiah 27:9, it's used this way: "By this therefore shall the iniquity of Jacob be purged. And this is all the fruit to take away his sin, when he marketh all the stones of the altar as chalk stones that are beaten in sunder, the groves and the images shall not stand up." That word images there is kaman. And that kaman is talking about an obelisk, the images or the pillars that they put up in their groves. Here's another word in Hebrew, matzebah. Matzebah it means pillar or monument or idol. It is the erected obelisk, is what they're talking about. Exodus 34:13, "But ye shall destroy their altars, break their images, and cut down their groves." Leviticus 26:1 says, "You shall make no idols nor graven image, neither rear you up a standing image. Neither shall you set up an image of stone in your land," talking about the obelisk, "to bow down to it, for I am Yahweh your Elohim." Deuteronomy 7:5 says, "But thus shall you deal with them. You shall destroy their altars, break down their images, and cut down their groves, and burn their graven images with fire." And you can see that there's quite a few more scriptures throughout the Bible that talk about the pillars and the obelisk that they set up throughout their land. The great God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, Yahweh, he was constantly fighting not against the small gods. He was constantly fighting against their prime god, which was Baal, the sun god. He was always mentioning Baal and Ashtaroth and the sun god of the east and the sun god of the west. Here is some pictures. We're going to roll through the entire world here. We're going to circle the globe and show you pictures throughout the entire world of these obelisks in their raw format. And on some of these, as the one that you can see here in Turkey, you can see that the ancient hieroglyphic and their language and pictures are actually still on these obelisks. Here's Cleopatra's Needle. Cleopatra's Needle is not just a neat little emblem. This was erected as a commemoration to the sun god there in London. This is the oldest obelisk in Scotland. This is the oldest obelisk in Switzerland, you can see. In Germany, in Paris, France, this one's covered with Egyptian hieroglyphics, all talking about a sun god worship. How about Mecca? It would scare me to death, ladies and gentlemen, to find out that that Islam's one of their big idols is an obelisk right there, dead center, downtown Mecca. And here, these obelisks we find all over the United States here. How about in Luxor, Egypt, near the Nile River, there is an Egyptian obelisk. This is one of the most famous obelisks in the entire world. It's in Buenos Aires, Argentina. It's dedicated to the sun god Ra, who is said to live inside of it. Everyone in that town, in that city, it's been there and knows the history behind that obelisk, knows that and understands that. Here's one in Amsterdam. Here's one in Ethiopia, Mongolia. And ladies and gentlemen, we're going to focus on this here for just a moment. And I'm going to show you something that is I only could see this from Google Earth. And it overwhelmed me. And so I wanted to share this with you as well. The largest obelisk in the world, I believe, which is hidden, is what you're seeing right here. If you look carefully, what we are seeing here is we are seeing the male genitalia of Ra, the sun god, or Baal, built into the actual architecture of St. Peter's Square and the entire Vatican building there. You can see the testicles at the bottom and then the shaft of that male organ moving up. Now, what's interesting is that if we turn this sideways, we're going to see that this architectural obelisk, if you will, is pointing directly due west down to the 0 degree. And my question is, why is it facing west? Is because this is the sun god. The sun god is the god of the sunset of the west. And you see in virtually every pagan society, sun god worship, the altars always face the west because that is where they did their service. And I believe that the enemy had a huge part to play in the architectural of this particular Roman Catholic structure is actually a depiction of the male organ of the sun god. That is not a place for an Egyptian obelisk which represents the male organ of the sun god coming through the genitalia of the solar wheel. Should not be in anything that is connected to Jesus, our Lord, whatsoever. But unfortunately it is in this modern day. The mixture of paganism and Christianity has crept into such a degree that we don't even recognize it because we don't know our history. We don't read the front of the book. Okay, now this is an interesting slide because this particular picture is of an obelisk that's in the court of St. John's Church over there in Rome. And it's actually the Pope's church. It's actually the cathedral of the Pope. And so I'm just going to read the description of where this particular obelisk came from, because it's going to be shocking for you to realize that this was not an obelisk that was just created from concrete in modern day times. Here's this obelisk where it came from. The Egyptian obelisk that stands in the square of St. John Lateran is the largest in existence. Originally carved during the reign of Pharaoh Thutmose III, it stood in the temple of Ammon in Thebes, sun god, but was removed to Rome by Emperor Constantius, AD 317 to 361, and placed in the Circus Maximus. In 1587, Pope Sixtus V unearthed the fallen, broken, and long-forgotten obelisk and had it repaired and placed in the Piazza S. Giovanni in Laterano. Interestingly enough, it is possible that Moses saw this very obelisk when he was in Egypt. Now, this obelisk, meant to honor the sun gods, stands beside what Catholics call the Supreme Mother of all churches, the official cathedra of the Bishop of Rome, the Pope. And so we have literally a 3,000 to 4,000 year old obelisk built for the sun gods of Egypt, now stands at St. Mary's Cathedral. How about the Washington Monument? Is it a monument? It certainly is a monument, but it's not a monument to our God. It's a monument to the sun god. It cannot be a monument to anything other than that. It is not just a piece of architecture, ladies and gentlemen. This is the same exact structure that they built in ancient Egypt for the sun gods, as we've demonstrated thoroughly. Let me ask you a question. Where do we find this main symbol of the sun god today? Where do we find this main symbol of the obelisk? Would it shock you to discover that we find it in our churches? That's right. That's where the sun god obelisk ended up. It ends up in our churches all around the world. We call them steeples. They're called obelisk in ancient Egypt. If Pharaoh or an ancient Egyptian was alive today, they would walk down the street and they would feel comfortable coming to most of the churches that we have today because they would say, wow, that is my religion. That's something that I can connect to. That is sun god worship. And we see throughout all around the world, here's one that has two pillars that are built into this particular church. Ladies and gentlemen, the obelisk, the sun god worship, there shouldn't be one single symbol anywhere of ancient paganism or Egyptian sun god worship that is found inside of our religious societies today in Christianity. We see it, it doesn't matter what denomination, whether it's Lutheran, whether it's Baptist, whether it's non-denominational, it doesn't matter where you find it, no matter what denomination, you are going to find this obelisk all over the place. Now we come to this same slide that says, but that's not what it means to me, Jim, and I know that many of you are thinking that. And the reality is it doesn't matter what it means to us, and that's so difficult for us to comprehend and to get through our hearts and our minds, that it only matters what it means to Him. Certainly most of us would not wear a necklace that was a satanic symbol. But yet we will build churches with symbols that we don't even know are satanic. We will have holidays that surround themselves with pagan symbols, and yet because we don't know them, we think it's okay. But the reality is that the great God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, He knows what those symbols mean. And so from His perspective, He sees those symbols and it reminds Him of when they passed their children through the fire of Molech. It reminds them of the infants that were killed and sacrificed on the altars of Ishtar. It reminds Him of all the sun god worship, of all of His people that turned their side against Yahweh and served other gods. It's a reminding symbol to Him, and for that reason alone, we should put those symbols behind us and get rid of them and burn them like Nehemiah and Jeremiah and the great prophets of old that tore down those high places and they destroyed those pillars. And here they spent their blood in pouring out their blood and their strength and their children to tear down those high places. And here we are building those high places right back up. It doesn't matter what it means to us. It matters what it means to Him. And so we need to find out exactly what it means to Him, and we're going to do that at the end of this program as we go through some scripture that many of you probably have never read before that are dictating exactly the holidays that we're celebrating today, and we're going to discover whether or not we can actually continue to do these things from our perspective and turn a blind eye to His heart. Now, when do you think the birthday of Nimrod and Tammuz was? On the first day of the year when the sun is reborn. And what day do you think that the sun is reborn? In the middle of the winter, at this winter solstice, December 25th. That's right. That's where we get December 25th on Christmas Day, where we say that Jesus was born. Why did we choose Jesus being born on December 25th? Where did that date come from? Very simple. Jesus was the Son of God. Tammuz was the son of the gods. He was the son of his father, Baal. And so the pagans, which early Christianity came right out of paganism in Rome, they were already worshiping the sun god on Sunday in Rome, which is where we get worshiping on Sunday from. It used to be that all of the early Christians worshiped on Saturday, but it was changed to Sunday because all of the pagans worshiped the sun god on his day, Sunday, and they worshiped Him on His birthday on December 25th. So naturally, when Jesus came into the picture and Constantine supposedly got saved in the 300s, they compromised to make it easier for people to convert to Christianity by making Jesus' birthday on the same birthday as the sun gods that they were already used to celebrating, and that's where we get December 25th from. One of the largest cultic and pagan celebrations took place during the winter solstice. Why? Because this is when the sun is reborn, as that is the time that the days of the year begin to get longer. Thus, the sun god's birthday coincided on that day, the 25th. It originally was the 21st, and then because of the change of the Julian calendar, it got moved to the 25th.